Hello and welcome to Film Shrapnel. This is Craig here, and as always, I'm joined by Tobias. And today, our episode
Hello.
is on a film that Tobias has been nagging us to watch for a very long time. It's Death Race 2000. Tobias, tell us about this film.
I love this film so much. Oh my god. It's like Wacky Races, but with killing people. It's just great. It's just great. The only thing it's missing is Muttley and Dick Dastardly. It's great. I love this movie. It's super tongue-in-cheek. It's super... I need to think of a better adjective, but it's incredibly tongue-in-cheek. It really doesn't take itself seriously whatsoever. Death Race 2000. It's set in the year 2000, which seems mad now. Made in 75. I forget now the date of this film. I don't
I think
know
it's 75.
75. So pre-Rocky, by the way. That'll be important later.
Mm-hmm.
So it's set in 2000, so not too distant future, and society has sort of, gone back to the sort of, gladiatorial death match kind of demeanor, where they televise a annual cross-country race where the objective is to kill people, as many people as possible. Which, I have to say, if this game is so popular and everyone knows about it globally, why do people even go out? Like, there's road workers at one point, and you're like, surely you'd take the day off, because the death race is on. But anyway.
Capitalism for you. You have to work, even though you might die.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think I like that even better. That road. Yeah, you know what? It's actually incredibly good that there's road workers. It's nuanced. I like it.
There's even one. Sorry, at one point there's even a family having a picnic, and it's like, come on, you're gonna fuck.
Yeah, but that was a trap. I mean, we'll get into it later, but it was a trap. It's not a real family. But yeah, should we go into the details? But like overall, it's a death game, just a death game.
Yeah,
and you have like sort of a repressed society. There are like resistance fighters and rebels and stuff, But yeah, we'll get into the finer details. But what do you think of this film, Craig? Because I like it a lot.
Yeah, I know you like this movie, and I can see why you like it, actually. It's a very fun little film. It's how to describe this movie, really, because I think, like, when it came out, some people thought it was a bit trashy. Like, I was reading that Roger Ebert, when he first watched this movie, he hated it, and he gave it 0 stars. But later on, decades later, he actually quite kind of admired it a bit more. Like, I think it kind of grew on him, and he realized the influence of it. It's a very fun film. What I found quite interesting about it, for a 70s movie, it's pretty fast. It gets straight to the point.
It's only 80 minutes long as well, so it's succinct. It's quick storytelling. You get all the information you need, and then they just move on, and it's boom, 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 boom until the very end of the film.
Yeah, and that's like, it feels quite strange for a 70s movie to be that quick, because some 70s movies, they really drag it on in the beginning before something really happens. So, but this film's like, I think we did a thing about this before. Do you remember when we watched Con Air? And we were talking about how all of the convicts have their kind of like introduction, the crimes they've done, their nicknames, all this kind of stuff. And you get that here as well. Like, you got I think we have like 5 cars, and you've got one racer and you've got one navigator. And you get a little introduction, and like, bam, though, it's done within 10 minutes, and then they're already going, It's very, very swift, and I kind of appreciate that, actually.
I actually think it might even be quicker than 10 minutes, I think within 10 minutes we're racing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you're right, actually, because it's so... I was really expecting it to be a lot longer at the beginning, but yeah. But by the way, so you mentioned Rocky a second ago. We've got to talk about Stallone in this, because
We do.
Is this the first film we've done with Stallone in it? I think it might actually be.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
this is
you
before
gotta
that.
love Stallone.
He hasn't. But this is before the point where he talks like that. He's a bit. It's kind of. He's very baby faced in this. As you said, it's before Rocky,
Yeah,
so like he hadn't got big just yet. And
I mean,
I don't know.
I do think he did Lords of Flatbush before this, which is pretty good. He's good in it as well. I think that's his first film. I'm not 100% sure.
Hmm,
Although there is rumours that he did a porno, and that was his first film.
good place to
But
start.
but well, I say rumours. I think it's out there. You can watch it. I think it's called The Italian Stallion. But like, surely that's a reference to Rocky. So I can't see how a film that predates Rocky can reference Rocky. So I don't know.
Well,
And
he
if
did write Rocky.
yeah, he did write Rocky, so you can't think he'd want to put his porn career in his writing debut.
Why not? It's the
Maybe,
'70s.
I don't
Anything
know.
goes.
It is yeah, actually, good point. Well, Stallone plays Machine Gun Joe, and he gets all pissed off because he's super competitive. Oh, I keep saying super as an adjective. Uh,
Super.
he keeps getting annoyed because people like Frankenstein, the star of the movie, David Carradine, the number one driver in the death race, survivor of the big pile-up in '96. But everyone loves him, so Machine Gun Joe, or Stallone, he's pretty jealous. And when we're introduced to him, they're all cheering Frankenstein in the audience. And he's like, "You want Frankenstein? I'll show you Frankenstein." And then he pulls out a machine gun and shoots the audience. And everyone loves it.
Yeah, that's a big theme in this film.
Frankenstein! I'll show you Frankenstein.
But also, like,
He literally says that like numerous times throughout the film.
I wrote down some of the lines that his character has uh,
Oh
because I
yeah.
found them hilarious. I don't know, like, what to think of them, really. Like, there's one point where, so we should explain, by the way, in the death race, you get points for the people you kill that just happen around. Like, I think it's like 40 points for
Oh
an
yeah.
adult, women and elderly people and children are worth more, stuff like this.
Hang on.
I don't
I
really
think I've
know
got
how the points come into it later on, though, because, like, if you win, you win.
well,
So,
well see this is the thing. I don't understand like they don't really explain what happens when you win the race itself, not with kills, but just getting across the finish line. I have a theory, although I didn't look this up. I just have a theory. I reckon it's like Golden Snitch Quidditch rules. So,
right.
like, you know, the Golden Snitch in Harry Potter, when you catch it, you get 150 points and the game ends. And a lot of people have pointed out, well, doesn't that make all the other gameplay totally superfluous? And I think Goblet of Fire, they do a Quidditch game where the losing team catch the Golden Snitch. So you can still lose by catching the Golden Snitch. Ergo, I pose the theory that in Death Race, when you cross the finish line, you'll get like a huge amount of points and the race is over. But
But if no one finishes, it goes down to points. Who killed the most?
this is it. This is it. But I do have some of the point system here. They said teenagers are 40 points, toddlers are 70 points, and pensioners are 100 points or something. And women of all these categories is an extra 10 points.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really like so. Like we haven't actually really mentioned this yet, but the reason we're doing this we're doing Death Race 2000, and we're also going to do the Running Man and a couple of other episodes. But we haven't mentioned that we're doing like how did you use the phrase earlier that sums up
Death
deathmatch,
Game Month. Death Game
death
Month.
game month. Yeah. So like the more I'm watching these movies, and I'm really like seeing similarities between them, especially when it comes to violence and entertainment. We
Well,
kind of want it, but I don't know. Like we kind of have
I mean,
some.
to be fair, I do think it's something to consider that this is American culture as well. It's not, it's specifically America, and they make a point out of it. They open the film with the US national anthem, which, by the way, I don't know about you, but every time I hear that now, I think of Borat when he sings Kazakhstan. I honestly, every time I hear the US national anthem, I think of Borat. But like they really lean into the patriotism and like so patriotism, of America tying together with the media and all of this sort of violent sports stuff. And let's not forget that in America, NASCAR is huge, probably the biggest sport in America,
Yeah, I think
or
probably
one of the
American
biggest sports.
football.
I don't know. I think you're. I don't think you're right. I don't think you're right. I'm
I think more people probably watch basketball and American football than they do NASCAR. I mean, NASCAR is big, but I don't think it's as big as those other two sports, to be honest.
I think you'd be surprised. I think NASCAR is huge. And the thing is, NASCAR, they crash a lot, super violent. People die. There's explosions. Some people are disappointed that there isn't a crash when they go to see NASCAR. And then also you consider like monster car derbies, which I won't lie, because we don't have them in England, and I've never encountered them anywhere else. But they do look quite fun and cool. Like when I saw them on, there's one on The Simpsons where they bring out a giant dinosaur truck that
Mm.
eats all the other trucks. I mean, obviously that's hyperbole, but like I like, it sounds like a lot of fun just watching cars smash into each other. It's like big robot wars.
Yeah, that's the closest thing we have in the UK.
Yeah, but like I say, uh, I do think it's important to point out that this is very, very critical of America specifically.
But can I also mention something though? So I was digging around a little bit, and I found out that this film was kind of like uh, not exactly a response, but trying to capture the same audience as Rollerball, which was our second podcast, by the way.
Really?
Uh,
I
yeah,
mean,
so
you
Rollerball was a
can
massive influence on this film.
you can definitely see that, I guess. If only we'd saved Rollerball for this month as well, it would have been perfect to slot in.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, you can definitely see flavors of Rollerball. But I do love the whole sort of wacky races element as well. Um, dude, I mean, should we just quickly talk about the contestants of the death race and get it out the way? Because we've
go
talked
on, go
mostly
on.
about Stallone, but we haven't talked about anyone else. In fact, there's really
Yes.
only one person we really need to talk about. Um, but there's one, I think she's called Calamity Jane, and she has like a car that's got a bull face on it and horns. Um, you have I don't know, I forget what her name was, but they refer to her, the announcer refers to her as the swastika sweetheart, and it's it's a car of Nazis.
Yeah.
In the future, Nazism's had a resurgence, um, in a sort of
Well,
mainstream way as well, to be in the media and stuff. Like no one dislikes them because they're Nazis.
yeah,
If
even
anything,
people
it's like a
actively
fun
supports
little,
them.
yeah. And they make it into like a fun little thing. So like, I think this is like America times 10, basically. Um,
Yeah.
I like that there was one of the media personalities. I wrote her name down. Her name was Grace Panda, and I thought it was interesting that her character name was Panda. I really like that. Um,
Pandering to the audience.
yeah, and everyone that she spoke to, she referred to as a dear friend of mine if she was speaking to the camera.
Another
I
thing, by the way, sorry, just to chime in, like a theme I've noticed of these death match kind of films is there's always like you have your contestants, you have your bad guys, and you also like many of them have this these kind of how would you call them kind of host type figures, TV
yeah,
personalities.
well, this is the thing. I mean, in the 70s, like in the sort of early 70s and 80s sort of death race games, movies, I would agree with you, but you'll see as the month progresses that it doesn't do that after the 80s.
Hunger Games.
Did they do it in? I've never seen Hunger Games.
They have it in Hunger Games, yeah. They kind of bring it back.
Oh, okay. All right then, fair enough. Well, we'll get to that. Don't spoil that for me. It's the only film this month that I haven't watched, so I want to experience it properly. So I was just going to say that Grace Panda woman. I thought it was Jar Jar Gabor, so I wrote Jar Jar Gabor in my notes throughout all my notes, and then I looked it up. It's not Jar Jar Gabor. It's someone else. But I do recognise her, and she does really remind me of Jar Jar Gabor.
Yeah, I didn't notice the name Panda. That's quite nice.
Yeah, I like it. Because it's also nice and tongue-in-cheek. Like, it's noticeable, but you can miss it. It just adds to the sort of commentary. It doesn't add to the universe. It adds to the commentary. Yeah, I really like it. But our main character, we got to talk about Frankenstein. Played by Kill Bill himself, David Carradine.
Yeah.
Also Kane in Kung Fu.
Yeah. I read that apparently he wanted to take this role because he wanted to not just be seen as like a martial arts guy. He wanted to also like show that he can take on other roles and, kind of expand.
I mean, I do like David Carradine. I don't know if I love him in this one per se.
He looks.
I think he's.
Sorry.
No, I'm just going to say I think he's a bit too stoic. But go on.
I don't know. I found his costume incredibly like gimpy. Yeah, I don't think they needed to make him dress that way.
The design is pretty weird. But obviously, and if you've seen the remake, they do a similar sort of thing. But they make this big deal that he's disfigured under that costume, and that's why he wears it. But as it turns out, he isn't remotely disfigured, and hasn't got all of his body parts replaced like they say. Frankenstein has died numerous times, and then they just replace it with a different guy with the same mask. But they just don't tell the people. You let Frankenstein live on and become a sort of cult, a hero, an American hero. And that's important because if he wins a third race, he will get to shake hands with the president. That'll come round later.
Yes, it's very important.
I mean, they're all the people that's worth talking about. Obviously, Frankenstein's navigator as well. He gets a new navigator. Long story short, she's basically like a member of the resistance, and the plan is for her to help the resistance ambush Frankenstein, replace him, and then kamikaze to the president. And when we're skipping a lot here, but when David Carradine finds out, he just laughs. But then we later find out, although, maybe we'll save that. Maybe we'll save what we later find out.
You want to save it? I don't know if we can. I think it's also my fault. I think I meander a lot and I keep coming back to it. I get too excited and I want to say things that I have in my notes.
Let's just do it. Well, yeah, he also has plans to kill the president. So the irony is what he's laughing at. We find out later that the laugh is for the irony of the situation, because he ends up killing them because they're ambushing him, and he scores their points for the game. And then when he finds out what the plan is, he just laughs because he's like, "You idiots, you absolute idiots! It's what I'm planning on doing anyway." So Frankenstein's one of the good ones. He's not corrupt like the rest.
And it seems like there's a very silly thing. Like he will take off all of his costume because there's a bit of sex in this movie, and actually a fair bit of nudity. But he never takes off one glove, and she asks him why he doesn't take it off. And we find out that he has the most ridiculous hand. He has a grenade, there's a grenade into it.
It's so dumb, isn't it? That I love it. Like, if you weren't sure, if people watch this film and they think it's taking itself seriously, it's just from the 70s. You're wrong. It's when you get to the quote unquote hand grenade, you'll go, I'm such an idiot for thinking that this is remotely taking itself seriously. It's so dumb, and it's trying to be dumb, and it's trying to be a giggle. But I looked into it. The director, so this is a Roger Corman production, and known for schlocky cinema. And the director, he felt like Roger Corman wanted this to be more serious, and the director was like, nah, this won't work if you do it seriously. We've got to do it like as a big joke. So that's how Death Race 2000 came about. But Roger Corman really didn't like that it was tongue-in-cheek and funny. And he complained. He was like, no, this is not the film I wanted you to make. So what do you think he did, Roger Corman?
I don't know. Tell me.
He gave, he just went, let's make another one. So they made a new film. They even cast David Carradine, and it's called Death Sport. And it's not got cars in. It's not a sequel to this. It's a different film. But it's more in line with what Roger Corman had originally wanted. It is dog shit. Do not watch. It is
that's
bad.
Sad.
It doesn't work at all. This, however, does really work. And apparently there is a sequel to this called Death Race 2056 or something like that. I haven't seen it, though. But I'd be interested to give it a try.
Yeah, because I've heard of this one plenty of times, but never the second. I also heard something similar about this film. I heard the original script had a lot more comical moments. Yeah, but they cut a lot of them out because it was too much.
Yeah, so I believe when the director was inserting the comedy, Roger Corman, after seeing some of the dailies, is taking it out, basically. But yeah, I think, bit of column A, bit of column B for that.
Yeah.
I would have liked this to have been more fun as well, like more funny, more in your face with its, ridiculousness. I would have liked that. I've got a few notes here that I just really want to breeze right past because there's not much to say about them. I just want to ask you, Craig, what do you think about a random guy who decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go outside on the day of the death race as a bullfighter, and I'm going to lure the one driver whose car looks like a bull, I guess, for shits and gigs. Who does that? But this is what I like about it. He gets his 5 minutes of fame. He gets to be on the TV. So I really like this film, and it's actually more. It's far more considered than it first appears as well. You might think this is just a nuts film, but it's actually, there is consideration, there is thought behind a lot of it. But my note says, why is there a bullfighter? ... Never mind, he's dead now. I love this one as well. Tell me what you thought of this moment. There's a moment where there's a geriatric hospital and all the nursing staff leave a bunch of old people out in the street as like an offering to Frankenstein, essentially. And
I think I wanted to die. Wasn't that the idea as well?
Well, yeah, that as well. And I suppose the argument is that the whole point of this game is to weed out the herd a little bit. I think a country with a population problem might like this. It might adopt this. So yeah, maybe it's trying to sort of be like a way to deal with overpopulation, perhaps. Maybe that's an element to the film.
There's a big joke about they blame the French for pretty much every problem in this film. One of the things they say is that they ruined the economy.
Yeah, they use France as a scapegoat for literally every issue in American society.
But you were saying about the old people.
I thought it was no, but I just to carry on with that, I did think that was very poignant. ... I did think it was very poignant. For to like more poignant now than ever. But yeah, the hospital thing. Frankenstein decides to kill the nurses instead because he's nice. He's a nice murderer. He's like Dexter with a car.
That's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah. So, and then the last thing I'll say, and this is like the end of day one of the race, because for anyone who hasn't seen the film, at the end of every day they go to like a fancy sort of hotel or something, and they all get pampered and stuff and interviewed for the press and all this, so they can interact with each other. The drivers can interact with each other every evening. So that's when they end the days. But just before they end day one, the Nazi woman calls women the master race, which made me laugh. Sly slaps his own navigator just for talking to Frankenstein. And there's one thing that happens at the beginning of day two. I won't say that quite yet. But there's a bit where Frankenstein's navigator says something to him about why does he kill? Or why is it important to win? And I love the line that he delivers. What David Carradine replies is, winning is the only standard of excellence left. And I love that line because he's saying, I mean, we've got nothing else to fight for. So winning's the only, like, we're not an excellent nation. So winning is the only excellence I can hope to achieve, sort of thing. I just really like this line. But that's the end of day one. Day two, there is a girl who physically offers her body to Frankenstein, but not sexually like Frankenstein thought she was, but to, for him to score points on her, volunteer for him to kill her so he gets points, because he's such a national icon for being a death racer. And
he does it as well.
And he does do it. And she said, why? And then the navigator says to him, why would she do that? And then he goes, to show me she loves me. I just really like, you know what? The more I think about it, no, I do like David Carradine's performance in this. I just don't like the costume. I think you're right. I think it's the costume.
Also the car as well.
Is all right.
I can't help thinking when I look at this. I just think it's just not very practical, because if you've driven a car, if you have something like that, like his car has like this kind of spine thing that goes right through the middle. Like, how can he see anything that's on his right side? It's just impossible.
That's what he's got his navigator for. He's got a navigator, and let's not forget that they're going to have engine trouble along the way. I like that the car is sort of practically designed for the navigator to get out and tinker with the engine without stopping the car. I like that. I like the car. I like his car. I don't like Machine Gun Joe's car because it's just a giant knife on the front of the car. Not a sword, just a really, really big knife, and that's it. His name's Machine Gun Joe, and we only see him with a machine gun once. It would have been cool if he had machine guns on the car. I would have liked that.
Can I tell you some of my lines that I quite liked with him and his navigator?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Frankenstein? I see you, Frankenstein.
There was one where it's like, Frankenstein, I hate him. And his navigator's like, you're salivating. Something like this. And then there's another bit later on where, because he hates pretty much everyone, and his navigator also gets on his nerves a lot. And it's like, some people might think you're cute, but I think you're one very large baked potato or something like this. So what the fuck?
Yeah, potato. Well, so apparently, that was meant to be a different line, but Stallone forgot it in the middle of the scene. So he's improvising that. But I don't know how true that is. But yeah, I read somewhere that it was, he'd forgotten his line, but he didn't want to break character, so he just said the first thing that came into his head. Hey, you hot potato. I think he was meant to call her a bitch or something. It's not even a hard line to remember whatever he forgot. He's probably like, you don't have to be such a bitch. He just decides to call her a hot potato. I don't know what happened in his brain, but that's, yeah. I, have you got any more? Like, that's the only line I wrote down. The hot potato,
Baked
the baked.
potato.
I think it was baked. I think it was baked potato. Yeah.
I think it
Do you have
was.
any other lines?
The only other one I wrote down that I remember was when he first kills the fans. So like there's these two guys, and they're putting up a sign for Frankenstein, if I remember correctly. And he's kind of annoyed because he wants where's his sign? No one is ever celebrating him.
Yeah,
And I think one guy's on a ladder, and there's another guy who's like below him, I think. And
dude.
he
Yeah, I know exactly the scene you're talking about, and he just drives a car into the ladder. Like, when you look at the shot, like, there's no other way you could have done that except for really doing it. Like, I remember watching him like, whoa, actually that looked really dangerous. Like,
uh,
I think it's funny when you look at the film around that scene where it's all far more violent, but that one, like, my health and safety hat was on there. Like, I was thinking of it like a job.
the
Where I'm like,
lawyers won't be happy for
whoa,
this.
there's no wires there. That's dangerous. That is. That poor stuntman might have died.
Probably the most dangerous shot in the movie was one of the least crazy looking. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the line there that I don't know why I wrote it down, and maybe it's not so significant now I think about it. It's like, gotta give the fans what they want. Because I think like one guy's like pointing at the other guy, like to kill him instead or something, and he just rams into him or something. But I don't know. There's
Yeah.
something about that
Yeah.
line and it being delivered by Stallone.
I do love the bit. There's a bit where Stallone like encounters just a random fisherman. Again, what is with all these random people just hanging out in the middle of the death race? Surely you'd stay indoors. It's like the purge. Like, you'd stay indoors and lock the doors if it was purge night. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know
Yeah,
why people don't just stay at home. But he's just casually fishing. He's like, you know what? You're one of them racers, ain't you? I'm a huge fan. I got all your posters, Mr. Frankenstein. And then you're like, just before he says Frankenstein, you can see Stallone is loving the attention. And then suddenly, Frankenstein! And he just gets, I really like Stallone in this, but he's really, really annoying. But I kind of like that
yeah.
for his character. Because in
I've
the
never seen him
remake,
act like this.
no, it's different. It's different for Stallone, isn't it? But like, in the remake, they fix the Frankenstein costume problem, but I think I think there's a Stallone-shaped hole in the remake. They got Tyrese Gibson for Machine Gun Joe, and he doesn't like, the remakes are done like seriously. They're not done tongue in cheek. So I don't really
Mm.
like the remake with Jason Statham, and they do it in like a prison. It's not
I remember.
a cross country thing.
Yeah, I've seen bits of it, but not the whole thing. Do you want to know something that'll make you sad?
Go on. Here we go.
The remake has a higher score on IMDb than the original by like zero
No.
point 0.2 points, which is, I mean, I haven't seen the
That's,
remake, but I just don't see how it can really beat this movie.
I mean, well, the remake is just sort of like a generic action film. This one is really clever, smart, considered, and it's a really good commentary on sort of American society. And it's a 50-year-old film, and it's
And
still
it's fun.
poignant, and it's really fun. It's like it's Wacky Races, but with murder. It's great.
Yeah.
It's on it. Like I say, imagine Dick Dastardly throwing, like, hand grenades at people. It's brilliant. I love this film so much. I have a huge soft spot for it.
I was thinking like a lot sometimes when we watch movies that are not too highly rated, like they have some problems, but there's an idea there that's quite good that could be explored a bit more. Like for example, Saturn
mm,
3, maybe I would say that there. I would love to remake
yeah,
that. But this movie, I wouldn't remake. I'll just leave it as it is. I think it's fine.
it's
Don't need to touch
it's
it.
already. This is. I totally agree. This film doesn't need a remake. It's not necessary. It's already the best possible version of the story, I think. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, I we skipped over it, but like, what did you think of? Did it take you out of the film, the sort of cartoon logic that some of it had? because I like that it still felt like, you know, it followed the rules of somewhat like at least common sense. So like there's a bit where they literally put like a cartoon tunnel
Yeah.
on the edge of a cliff to trick someone into driving off a cliff. And I'm like, "Oh, that's a bit too Looney Tunes for me. I don't think that works live action. Like when I see cartoon logic in a live action movie, it's got to be done really, really well for it to be able to work, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't
It was a
think
bit silly.
painting. It's a bit silly, right? I don't think painting a tunnel on the side of a cliff so you crash into the cliff or go off the edge of a cliff. I just don't find that remotely believable. And I'm not saying any of this film is believable. It's just that when you do that, you're telling me that the characters are like dumber than a child, dumber than like a baby might go, can that happen in real life? But no child is dumb enough to fall for that, let alone fully grown adults. So that sort of thing, it does break it a little bit for me. But it's only a minor complaint. I just don't like cartoon logic in live action.
Yeah, I think maybe the idea was there that they're going so fast that they wouldn't even have noticed. They just
Oh,
instinctually
mate,
go,
come on, they're professionals. This is their job. And they're
yeah,
like
true.
top of their game as well. Like these are like 5 champions racing each other or whatever. So you can't,
Yeah.
I don't think you can make that argument if I'm honest. I
Do you
think
know there was
they're all famous. They're all like, everyone's cheering their names, so they must be champions in their own regard.
yeah. There was one other part where a character dies that I was thinking about that I thought was a bit ridiculous and maybe some kind of sexist commentary. Do you
Go
remember?
on.
So there's one woman. Is it the one with the that? Yeah, it must be the one with the car shaped like a ball. She, some guys attack her on a motorbike. They try to
Yes,
get
yeah,
her to a mine because there's a trap that's going to blow up. And so there's a
yes,
mine right in the sand because it's the whole film. By the way, I think they filmed it. It's supposed to be across the US, but I think they filmed all of it in California. She just misses the mine, and then she has to turn around. So she does like
yeah.
uh, and I was just thinking, like, she could have done that in 2 maneuvers. She didn't have to do three because she kept going back and forth to turn the car around. And then on the third attempt, bam, the wheel goes over the mine and explodes. And I was thinking, is this like some kind of sexist commentary on women driving that they don't know how, like, to just move the car around and shit? Because, like, she really could have done that in 2 maneuvers, not three.
I,
And she would
I, I
still
don't
be
know.
alive.
I don't know about that. Like, it's just comedic tension building, isn't it?
It was a bit silly, though. It was a bit silly.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's taking the piss out of tension building.
There wasn't even anything there. It was just in the middle of the desert. She probably could have even done it in one if she wanted to. I don't know.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I'll give you that. Sexist film. I'm sure that. I mean, that's not. I don't think that's the intent of the film to be sexist. But perhaps it
No.
was
Well,
made
I
in a
think,
sexist time, so
yeah, but they did give women a bit more time in this film, I
absolutely.
think.
We have 2 female drivers, despite one of them being a Nazi. We do have 2 female drivers, and you know they are competing equally in a sport alongside men, which is something they get rid of in the remake. I don't believe there is a female driver in the remake because it's a male prison. So you know they remove that. They remove a good step for the remake. I suppose we should talk about really quickly day 3 before we get to the ending of the film.
Okay.
So we've talked about the hand grenade. We've talked about the media blaming the French. This is where like all of this really good commentary comes in. Like day 3 is really important for the whole film. Also, there was a scene before day 3 where Stallone tried to kill Frankenstein's navigator.
Strangling her
And
to death.
strangling her to death. How do you feel when you know that For the rest of your life, you're going to be in agonizing pain. It's going to be about 1 minute. And just so weird. Like, some of the dialogue is a bit shitty. But at the beginning of day 3, he kills his own pit crew because he's pissed off and scores 40 points or whatever. Frankenstein gives his navigator like a roofie, by the way. I don't know if you
Yeah, I remember
recall
that bit.
that.
I do. Why did he
Yeah.
do that
And then
again?
I really, because this is it. That's all I wrote in my notes. I wrote, Frank slips navigator a roofie, and then when she's sleeping, the rebels try and stop him in a plane. And because she's passed out, they think she's dead. So they decide, all right, let's bomb the shit out of him. Sylvester Stallone is watching from a distance. And then I think the rebels start going after him a little bit. And then and to be fair, this is a really cool chase between a plane and a car. And Frankenstein has to sort of figure out a way to get the plane to crash into a mountain. Really cool. Like, really cool sequence. But it all hinged on him giving her roofies. Why?
Yeah, they never explained why he did that. He just knocked her out. And by the way, like, just the idea of the plane bombing the car, that's not as practical as it would have looked. Like, could you imagine every time the plane goes by, it's going to go like several kilometers out of the way to turn around and then try and bomb them again?
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't have actually been so interesting, I think. It wouldn't have been so quick in real life.
This is it. But to be fair, North by Northwest does it good. There's no bombing, though, is there?
Yeah, I remember that scene. That was quite cool.
Yeah, oh yeah. Maybe he roofies her because he doesn't trust her. Because, I mean, Stallone does accuse her of tampering with the car, and that's why he was choking her. Like that's a reason to choke anyone. But also, he knows that she works for the Resistance. He's figured it out by now anyway. I think he figures it out in day 1.
Mm-hmm.
So like, maybe he doesn't trust her. And what? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, wasn't there like a detour he took? But she would have made him go another way. So that's why he knocked her out? Is that it? I kind of hope. I just want to know. I just want to believe that the main character is a good guy, even when he's roofying women. do you know what I mean?
But it's just the question is why at that point roofie her? I think because he could have done it at any point. He could have even just got rid of her from the very beginning.
It could. Yeah, you're right. It could have been at any point. He could have just knocked her out throughout the whole race if he wanted to. But yeah. Well, we know that he does have a game. He does reveal the hand grenade to her when she wakes up.
And she wastes it to kill Stallone.
Right? You mentioned about like this being quick storytelling, right? So like you introduce the hand grenade and then literally in the next scene use it. So it's like, surely structurally speaking, you should have had some kind of subtle... I mean, I suppose there have been hints to his hand throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
Like they do some sexy hand foreshadowing when they're banging the night before, and she's like, "Why don't you take off your glove?" So they kill Machine Gun Joe with the hand grenade, but now and then, like David Carradine looks at her and he's like, "Well, now you're gonna have to change the gears for me."
Yeah,
he's only got one hand. So he does have an injury. This is the thing. He does have an injury of some kind. But he does mention that he's not the first Frankenstein and he won't be the last.
You know, I was thinking this is actually quite crucial to the end because it makes the ending not make any sense. So shall we do the ending now? And I'll explain why.
Briefly before we do the ending, we should probably point out, we've mentioned that there's a resistance. But there's one specific figurehead of the Resistance. She's an old woman called Payne or something Payne.
Thomasina Payne, I think it was.
Thomasina. And she keeps hijacking the broadcast and trying to put the message out to the people. She's very articulate and, and she's sort of leading the rebels. It turns out that Frankenstein's new navigator is her granddaughter.
Of course.
And I think that's important to point out for the ending as well.
Okay, good. Yeah, we haven't actually mentioned really the rebels that much. Haven't explained them much.
We've touched on it, but we haven't talked about the specific character and her relationship to the navigator for why this next moment is quite impactful and good. Although, well, let's talk. All right, let's go for the ending. Right. So
Right.
they know they're going to get to meet the president and blow him up when they shake his hand. But now
They don't have the hand
Frankenstein's only
grenade.
Exactly, they don't have the hand grenade now. So they have to change the plan. So they arrive, and we get this long shot of Frankenstein getting out the car, going to the president, and getting a knife out. And so we figure that it must be the navigator putting on Frankenstein's clothes. However, in the audience is the figurehead of the resistance, Thomasina Paine, whose perspective is Frankenstein killed her granddaughter. Because that's what the rebels thought, that she's passed out, he must have killed her. So she wants revenge. So she shoots Frankenstein, not knowing that Frankenstein is actually her granddaughter who swapped clothes. Ooh. But they don't get the president, do they?
No, they miss him.
They don't get them in that moment, but that's it. So when she falls down, David Carradine pops his head up from the car and then drives directly into the podium or stand that the president's on and kills the president.
Yes, but with one hand.
With one hand.
He said earlier that he needs someone to help him change gears. And now he's driving the car without even think, like, if it's a man. You could actually do it with like your other hand, but it's not so practical. And I was thinking, because like you'd have to change the gears a few times to get enough speed to ram it into that structure.
A lot of your criticism of this film has been like realistic driving. Have you got a new car or something recently?
No, I just have a driver's license. That's all.
All right. So the world is now liberated from the president,
and of course now Frankenstein is president.
Yes, and isn't it interesting that his popularity is based on the violence he committed before they brought about change? I thought that was really cool. So he announces that the race will be abolished. He gets married to the navigator. I keep forgetting her name.
Even though if we've already mentioned her name in the film.
I think we do. I just didn't write it down. But they're getting in their car for like their just married moment. And the media just won't leave them alone. And he's like, you can't go, Frankenstein. The people want what they want. You can't get rid of the race. We love the race. Blah, 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 blah. And so this is it. The media is, this guy from the media is trying to justify all the violence. And Frankenstein has made it clear he disagrees with the violence and wants to abolish it. So how does he deal with this guy? He kills him. So it's even though David Carradine is bringing about change, there's still this sort of ironic admission at the end that even when change comes, it's not really that change. And I really, it's really poignant. I really, really like this film. I think there's a lot of different ways you can read it. But, well, I think there's one direction you can read it, but it branches into lots of like, oh, I noticed this and maybe it means this. Or, oh, I noticed that and it means that. And I feel like that. I like the ending so much because it's ultimately it ultimately contradicts itself, and I love that about it. And it really, for me, it really leaves me with more things to ponder. It doesn't close everything off. I kind of now think, okay, what maybe the universe created since he's been put into power is no better than the one he tried to liberate. because human nature can't be changed, or something like
Although he
that.
tries to fight against it, is a flawed idea. Like
Yes,
he can try to enforce uh, a world where there is less violence, but ultimately he can't even prevent
but
himself.
but he enforces it with his own violence.
Yeah. I even
So it's
wrote down the
morally
line
corrupt.
the guy
Hmm.
says is like, our American way of life. Sure, it's violent, but that's the way we love it. Violent,
Yeah,
violent, violent. And then he gets hit by the car and he's dead.
it's
He's
so
literally
fun.
he's preaching violence and then literally gets murdered for it.
Yeah, oh, fucking genius. This film is fucking great. 10 out of 10. I. What did you think? Because I feel like they ended the film in a sort of like, you've got all this fun stuff, the whole movie, really tongue in cheek and comical, but right at the end, it's like like while the credits are rolling, it's like a David Attenborough documentary voiceover about the explanation, like explaining the birth of violence and murder, like violent behavior, like in
Oh, I
humankind.
forgot about that. Yeah.
And this is it. I was like, oh, you even when you end it on like a funny little joke, the credits, you're just going to do a cold credits with no music, and like, a sort of dictionary definition of violence or whatever. I can't quite remember now exactly. I'm sure it was like the birth of violence, but yeah, I thought despite it being a massive joke, it had a lot of important things to say, and that's what I really like about this film. 10
Yeah.
out of 10.
I think some people might not see why it had to be comical and take on the
Yeah,
subject of violence.
I suppose so. I mean, do you want to have what did you say the rating was on IMDb?
I didn't tell you. You want to guess what it is? Because I think I remember what it is.
I mean, you said that the remake is point 0.2 higher.
Yes.
So I'm going to guess the remake is like a 6.3 and this got a 6.1.
You are so close. You are one off
Go
on
on.
both.
Really? What
Yeah.
is it, 6? Is this a 6?
Let me double check to be sure, but I think uh, the remake was 6.4
And this is a
and
6.2.
yes, so let me see.
It, do
Yeah,
you think
6.4.
do you think it'd be interesting for us to do the remake this month?
I was wondering about it, but it might just
But
disappoint me, I think, because
we would have to swap out one of the films.
yeah, and I suppose there's others that also have sequels. I mean, if we do a sequel for one, then we have to look at all the others, and I think we can come back to it at some point. I think maybe we
Hmm.
should come back to Death Race,
Yeah.
but
Like I say,
I
there's a
don't think it's so
sequel and a
important.
remake that we can. I think the remake has like 4 sequels as well.
But I
I
don't
think it
know.
spun it. I think it spun its own franchise. I think Danny Trejo's in it and stuff. Like they got a really decent cast.
To be
Um,
honest, I just knew they had made one film. I had no idea they made
I'm sure they've made a
sequels.
few. Do you know that guy who's like a cheap version of Jason Statham? Is his name like Luke Cross or something? I'm sure he is in one of them, and he also is in Transporter 4. So he's like the go-to guy for when Jason Statham doesn't come back for a sequel. You just get this guy, and he just always seems to be picking up Statham's sloppy seconds. All right, so what? I'm actually unironically going to give this a 10 out of 10.
Oh, okay. I
I really like it. I think it's exactly what it needs to be.
I
Exactly. I
agree.
mean,
I think
if I'm
it's.
being realistic, it's probably like an 8
I was
because
gonna
you
say
do.
eight. I was literally just about to.
Well, this is it. You do have to factor in that it's not well made. The production value is low. It is a B movie, low budget film from the 70s, and it shows in a lot of places. The cinematography isn't perfect, and there's a lot of problems with it. But my God, it's exactly what it needs to be, and that's why
Hmm.
you know it. I like it enough. Like a personal rating would be a 10, and an objective rating would be an 8.
I'm matching you on the 8. I was also thinking like these kinds of B movies, like it's not just influential. Like I, I'm not no, I would say maybe Rollerball might have spun this kind of genre
Hmm.
potentially. I'm not sure if there's any earlier kind of deathmatch films,
I
but
think
I
there
think this
is, but
film,
I think there's a few. But I feel like the ones that we've chosen to do this month are specifically televised events, televised death games revolve around some kind of resistance rising up. Um,
that's true.
like and I think there's been like I know I certainly considered that when I picked these 4 films. Otherwise, there would have been a few others that we could have done. Like there's a film called Arena with Samuel L. Jackson, and that's literally just modern gladiators, and it's put on the internet. But it's an illegal website, but they put it on the internet, and people fight to the death. There's a couple of other ones as well, but I think specifically what we've done is we've got like these resistance uprising death game movies.
Yeah, and that really goes back to Rollerball again because it's a similar
Yes,
theme.
and especially at the end of Rollerball, where it's like you get this sense that he has inspired change, and people are going to rise against us.
Yeah, that was
The
the idea, wasn't
authority.
it? That they wanted him to retire, I think, because he was becoming too
Mm,
popular.
exactly.
And yeah, and but I was also thinking like these kinds of B movies, they're not only like fuel for future sci-fi movies, because they really do inspire a lot. Even if the film is a bit naff in places, yeah, we look past it. The idea is there, and we build off of that, and we make more sci-fi movies, and the budgets get
Mm,
bigger and more complicated, and the acting gets better, and the effects get better, and everything improves. But if it wasn't for these ones made before, you don't get that good stuff later on. But I was also thinking as well, films like this that can be very silly, even though like some of it was like actually a fair bit of it was intentional actually this time around. But that also influences a lot of comedies as well, like the ridiculousness, the
mm.
wacky races kind of ideas of this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, wacky sci-fi, naff kind of B movie sci-fi goes a
I,
long way in comedies as well.
I mean, when was Wacky Races? I'm sure it's like the 60s, maybe,
Let's find out.
maybe. Because I'm sure my dad has spoken to me about Wacky Races as if it was something he watched as a kid.
68, 1968 was the
So
first.
not too long before this. In fact, maybe Wacky Races did inspire this a bit,
I
to
would
some
not be
extent.
surprised.
Hmm. Yeah, because I suppose
Oh,
the commentator of the film is a lot like the sort of narrator of Wacky Races as well, in sort of the
it,
way he speaks.
somewhat. Yeah, actually, did you watch the newer Wacky Races? They did bring it back at one point. They tried to
No,
reboot
no,
it.
no. No, I've only
They
seen the classic era.
uh, they brought it back because they uh, on what's it called, Boomerang. They tried to reboot a lot of the cartoons from the old times, but they made them really funny actually. But people hated them. Like they redid Scooby Doo, and it was really funny. I really liked it. Some people disliked it. Like the aesthetic, I didn't like. It reminded me too much of Family Guy, but it was very funny. And
Yeah.
they did the similar thing with Wacky Races, and I just
Is,
saw that it was only rated 5 out of 10 on
is that
IMDb. But I didn't. I don't think it
was that?
deserves that.
Are you are you talking about the Scooby Doo reboot that was just about Velma? That's been
No,
super
not that one.
divisive on. No,
Not that
I've
one.
not
There was a
seen it
one
either.
before.
Well, I've not seen really any reboot of Scooby Doo do well on the internet, but I do distinctly remember the live action remake from the early 2000s. They seem to do well, and I quite enjoyed them. I didn't hate
The
them.
what I have noticed is that people don't want Scooby Doo to be different than what they remember it to being. So when people start messing with
Yeah.
it, they're like, "No, it's not how it's supposed to be." Like, I don't know. I haven't seen Velma, But I imagine it's a similar thing there because they're changing it too much. Although I have heard that it is actually generally quite bad. The remake
I've
that I
heard
am
bad
talking
things. Yeah.
about, the one that I'm talking about, really I found it very hilarious, like really funny at times, laugh out loud when I was watching it. But a lot of people just like, no, you ruined the aesthetic. No, it's just too stupid. But yeah,
All right,
people want what they
you'll
want.
have to send me a link to this. I'll have to
I'll
have a
look
look
it
for
up.
this one. Well, should we wrap it up there, Craig, with a film shrapnel
Yeah,
rating of an 8? That's Death Race
yeah,
2000, guys.
watch it. It's super.
Yeah, please do. This film needs more love, and I have to say, I think certainly people our age and younger, they rarely. It's rare that you find people that have even heard about this film, and it's got people you'll recognize. It's a really good laugh. It's incredibly poignant even now, 50 years later, and it's just really, really a good giggle. A very good giggle. And if you take anything away from today's podcast, ladies and gentlemen, it's go watch Wacky Races if you haven't already. That's fucking great too. But yeah,
Yeah,
love Death Race 2000. Really, really big fan. And yeah, I totally agree with your assessment, Craig, that there's really no need to remake or provide a sequel to this. It is exactly what it needs to be. It's perfect.
it is
A
indeed.
personal 10 out of 10. I think this is in my top 50 movies of all time. I
I
love
think
this
this
film.
is. Have you given a 10 out of 10 before? I think this might be one of the first times.
I mean, I think I've given 10s out of 10s for my personal opinion. If we ever do an Arnie film, it's going to be a 10 out of 10. That's foreshadowing
Well,
for next week's film, guys. All right, well, let's wrap it up there, Craig. Do you want to do the outro?
yeah, sure. Thanks everyone for listening to us. There's plenty more to listen to
There is indeed.
if you like more of our conversations on a lot of random films that we come across, mostly provided by Tobias, our expert film suggester guy. Um, there, next week, you should be, well, there'll be more deathmatch episodes coming. If I remember correctly, we agreed to do The Running Man, which just ruined your foreshadowing comment earlier,
Yes.
Hunger Games, and there was one other one that I forgot.
Battle Royale.
Battle Royale, which
Yeah.
I haven't seen Battle Royale. So
But
yeah,
this will give us one Death Game film for each decade, like 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I have to double check. I'm sure Hunger Games is in the noughties, like the late noughties.
I think you might be right, but I can't remember to be honest. So yeah,
So we're
stay
doing we're
tuned for
bringing you
more.
bringing you Death Game films throughout the eras.
Basically, yes. So stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and I guess YouTube as well. And we'll see you around. Thanks for listening.
We'll see
Bye
you
bye.
around. Bye.
Film Shrapnel.